Hi guys, Mr. Reiner here, and this is a recording of the lab called Carbohydrates, Chemistry, and Identification. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take 3 clean test tubes. As you can see on the left-hand side, they're numbered 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to put 30 drops of monosaccharide in tube 1. Here's our monosaccharide. So we're going to do 30 drops. Okay, and I'm going to take 30 drops of the disaccharide solution and put it in test tube number 2. And finally, I'm going to take 30 drops of a polysaccharide solution and put it into test tube number 3. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my Benedict's chemical indicator solution, and I'm going to add 30 drops to each test tube. Right. Benedict's starts out as kind of a very vibrant blue color, almost the color of Windex, or kind of like a raspberry Kool-Aid drink. And it's going to react with one of the 3 carbohydrates that we learned about. In order for it to react, we have to heat it. So I'm going to go and heat it for 2 minutes in a hot water bath. So as you guys can see, after 2 minutes in the hot water bath, we have a color change in test tube 1 only. The Benedict solution that was originally kind of a bluish color apparently has turned a reddish orange color, kind of a very vibrant color in that first test tube. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and clean these test tubes out. Now that I have 3 clean test tubes, I'm going to do the same thing and put 30 drops of monosaccharide, of disaccharide, and of polysaccharide into each of these 3 test tubes. So here is my monosaccharide solution. Here is my disaccharide solution. We're going to do 30 drops of it. And then once again, there's my polysaccharide solution. We'll add 30 drops to test tube number 3. Okay, we're going to use a different chemical indicator. This is called iodine. It's kind of a brownish, tannish, amberish type of color. You can see it in the dropper there. Kind of looks like soda. So I'm going to put 4 drops in each of the 3 test tubes. And we're going to swirl each of them. We don't need any heat this time. And as you can see, we got a color change in the 3rd test tube. The 3rd test tube is now a dark, like a blackish, purplish color. Test tubes 1 and 2 look very much like the original color of the iodine. So we have a positive reaction in test tube number 3. So test tube number 3, remember, was the polysaccharide. So it looks like the iodine is very good at indicating polysaccharides. And from our previous experiment, it looks like the monosaccharides make the Benedict's solution change a color. The disaccharide, test tube number 2, did not change color for the Benedict's or the iodine test. Now that we know how to use our 2 chemical indicators for carbohydrates, we're going to try to apply that knowledge and find out the types of carbohydrates that are in 5 foods that are relatively common in our household. So in the first test tube, I'm going to take a very dilute honey solution, and I'm going to put 20 drops of that honey solution in the first test tube. And I'm going to put 20 drops of a very watered down oat solution made from oatmeal into test tube number 2. Next, I'm going to take a solution of table sugar and put 20 drops of it in test tube number 3. And now I'm going to take some apple juice solution made from just plain old apple juice mixed just with a little bit of water. And I'm going to put 20 drops of it in test tube number 4. And finally, in test tube number 5, I'm going to take a powdered sugar solution and put 20 drops of it in that 5th test tube. All right, now we want to see how these behave with Benedict solution. We know that Benedict solution is good at indicating monosaccharides, so I'm going to put 30 drops of Benedicts into each test tube. All right, so the Benedicts has to now be heated in a hot water bath for 2 minutes. Okay, after having heated each of the 5 test tubes for 2 minutes apiece in the hot water bath, you can definitely see that there is a positive reaction in test tubes 1 and 4. Test tubes 2, 3, and 5 had no reaction and the Benedicts remained blue. So once again, we have 5 clean test tubes. Now we're going to test the 5 foods with unknown carbohydrates in them with the iodine solution. So I'm going to take my honey solution once again, and I'm going to add 20 drops of it. In test tube 1, I'm going to take my liquid oats solution and add 20 drops of it to test tube 2. My table sugar solution to test tube number 3. My apple juice to test tube number 4. And finally, the powdered sugar to test tube number 5. Now I'm going to add 4 drops of the iodine chemical indicator to all 5 test tubes. And I'm going to swirl each one of them and give you a good look. No change in test tube number 1. We have a pretty pronounced positive change in test tube number 2. No change in test tube number 3. No change in test tube number 4. And number 5 is kind of a mix. So that's something that you're gonna have to figure out. That was the powdered sugar. Maybe you should Google the ingredients of powdered sugar, and that might give you some insight as to why we're getting kind of maybe a subtle change. Definitely something going on in there. Okay? Thank you.